In this chapter, we are going to learn how to install PostgreSQL on Windows. Let's open our browser and download the software. Log into postgresql.org/downloads. We can see the download screen now. Select Windows. Download the installer. Now we can see a table matrix with PostgreSQL versions and operating systems. I'm going to select 12.3, which is the latest version for Windows 64-bit. Click on Select Download. Now my download has started. You can see it in the bottom. Our download has completed successfully. As you can see, PostgreSQL 12.3. As mentioned before, we need to have administrative privileges on Windows system to install PostgreSQL. Right-click on PostgreSQL exe, and there is an option called Run as Administrator. If you don't have admin privilege, it will prompt you with a window asking you to enter administrator password. So either get an administrator password or an administrator account to install PostgreSQL. So I select Run as Administrator, and I can see the installation screen popping up. So here is the PostgreSQL welcome screen. I click on Next. This is the installation directory where all software binaries of PostgreSQL get installed. On Windows, by default, it is in C, Program Files, PostgreSQL, and the version number. So since we are installing the latest version 12, it's mentioned as 12. If you are installing it 11 or 10, it will be mentioned respectively. We can change the directory to a different drive if we wish, but I'm continuing with the same defaults. So I'm clicking on Next. Here it is asking me to select components which we want to install along with PostgreSQL. Now, we will be discussing about pgadmin 4 and Stack Builder in a separate module later, but as of now, let us select them and move ahead. We need command line utilities to work with PostgreSQL Server, which is the first entry here. So we select all of them as of now and click Next. Data directory. It is the most important directory of PostgreSQL. It holds all the system catalogs and user data. By default, it goes to the same directory as your installation binaries with the subfolder data. We can segregate it and move to a different drive if we wish to. Ideally, in real time, what we do is we install software binaries in C drive and we keep the data directory in D drive or E drive. But in this case, we are continuing with the defaults. Click Next. Now it is asking me for a password for a super user PostgreSQL. Postgres user gets installed when we install the software. By default, this user is useful in setting up new users in the installed databases. So enter the password for Postgres and remember this password as we need it in future. We can enter anything we like as there is no limit for the password. So I entered a small password and I click Next. Now this is the default port. 5432 is the default port of PostgreSQL. We can change the port number if we wish to, but for that we have to install it and then make changes in the configuration file. We will see that when we are covering the configuration module. As of now, I'm continuing with 5432 since the port is available. Click Next. This is the place where we select the language which we want to use in PostgreSQL. You can see the list of languages here. Now, if I select default and leave it the way it is, it will pick up the language of my system, which is Windows. Now, whatever language I have set in Windows, that will be considered as a default language for PostgreSQL. I click Next. Now, here is my pre-installation summary. It gives you all the information about my selection, like installation directory, data directory, database port, and all the components which I have selected. If you wish to change any of this, you can go back and you can make the modification and follow the same path. So I'm happy with my selection. I click on Next. Now it is ready to install, and once I click Next, the installation will go through. So I click on Next and my installation has started. It will take anywhere between 5 to 7 minutes to install the software. Our installation is going to complete sooner. So now it's starting the database server. Our installation is completed. Now it has asked me whether I want to launch the stack builder. As I mentioned before, we will be checking at stack builder as a separate module later. So I'll uncheck it as of now and click finish. So we have successfully installed PostgreSQL on Windows. So how do we verify whether the PostgreSQL is installed properly and whether it's running or not? PostgreSQL runs as a service in Windows. So let us check the services whether our PostgreSQL is mentioned there. So I type services and I click on it, and it will show me all the Windows services which are running right now. We are looking for Postgres, and you can see here PostgreSQL version 12 is installed and it is running fine. There is another way of checking whether PostgreSQL is installed, which port it is listening to, which user, and which database. That is through a command line utility called psql. Just type in psql. It's a SQL shell. Press enter. Now it is asking me a set of options which I have to give before I access the database. It is asking me the server name. I installed it on my local system, so I'll say localhost. Press enter. Now it is asking me the database which I want to connect. By default, PostgreSQL creates a database called Postgres because we have not created any database. So PostgreSQL by default out of the box create a database called Postgres. So I'm connecting to Postgres database. Enter. Now this is a port which we selected, the default port 5432. Enter. The username which I said a super user called Postgres is created. It is the same user which we are trying to connect. Now it is asking me for the password which I told you to remember. I'll enter the password and here we go. We are in Postgres right now. So you can see that there are some databases already installed, and we will come back to this later. I just wanted to show you that it's working fine. So now I quit this module, and in the next one we will see that how to set up environment variables for Windows installation. It is a post installation task which we will be going through later in the next module.